Episode 155 of the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast. We are creeping down to the end of April and into May, and we got a lot of things we're excited about. Usually at this time of year, recruiting class rankings are coming out. I just released the attendance figures, which we can talk about next show, in terms of what schools are doing it right and which schools are maintaining their position on top. Iowa. And then we're going to stick with our 90th topic today, though. So we'll touch on things like attendance and recruiting class rankings and what makes a good recruiting class. Perhaps that's something you can talk about, Matt, with your experience as a head coach. But right now, we are moving to our middleweight discussion on our fictitious 90th anniversary team, which is based on the 75th anniversary team, which was released in 2005. To go back now to start to set the table, Matt, as I'm killing your introduction here. Bye. Say hi to the people, Matt. The 75th anniversary team included Lee Kemp of Wisconsin, Pat Smith of Oklahoma State, Lincoln McElravy of Iowa, Wade Chalice of Clarion, and Joe Williams of Iowa. Our team that we both decided on in doing a little revisionist history was Pat Smith, Lee Kemp, Lincoln McElravy. We replaced two wrestlers. We added Bill Cole, undefeated three-time national champion from Northern Iowa, then Iowa State Teachers College, and Mark Chiarella from Michigan, four-time All-American, finishing third, first. And Matt, before we even start going into the era of adding the next 15 years and adding the one spot, just statistically, this whole ordeal's been mind-blowing.
Oh, it's been crazy. And then we get into this episode, and you could almost have an argument that you could make an argument for five new guys on this team in some ways, that it will replace the 75th team, and the individuals that have come through that we've been so fortunate. It's been an embarrassment of riches in the middleweights the last 15 years. And we could arguably put five of these guys on the all-time team.
Yeah, if we didn't have weight classes, I feel like the middleweights here, and just so we're clear, when the term middleweights are being discussed for the purposes of this exercise, it's simply 149, 157, and 165. That was kind of where the old weight classes, of course, they've shifted over the years. But you're talking about embarrassment of riches. We talked about how few three-time champs that we had really to choose from at the lightweights. But in the last 15 years, we've had 12 multiple-time champions at this. I think maybe my math is a little wrong. Maybe I knocked a couple people off. Maybe Pendleton was in my early math and Askren because they're up at 174. But there's been double figures. Maybe it's 10. But we're looking at just the amount of names that we're going to go through. But just to go back and let you know, we did bump off Joe Williams and Wade Chalice, replaced them with Bill Cole, Mark Chiarella. Again, for the purposes of this exercise, we have added a sixth position. So we will not necessarily bump out people, or we will bump out people. We could be doing five, but just starting at some of the names that have gone through that won at least two championships at these weights. And we touched on Kyle Dake, had won his first of his four titles at 141, but the next three all came at these weight classes. So we're grouping Dake in this group. So here are the names that we are going to be arguing for and against today: Kyle Dake, Jason Nolf, Zane Rutherford, Ryan Bertine, Alex Dieringer, Johny Hendricks, David Taylor, Isaiah Martinez, Jordan Burroughs, Brent Metcalf. So, yeah, let's start with some of that funness. I guess the first place we start, it's kind of like what we did with Logan Stieber at the lightweights. Kyle Dake is a no-brainer here to be added to this team. So that gives us six right there that we've got to work on.
Yeah, we're going to spend as much time on Dake as we did with Logan. He's in. Four different ways he's in. So we've got so much to get into. Like that's the only easy part of this discussion, is putting Dake on the team. After this, it gets a little complicated.
And what's interesting as we go through this, we'll see that freshman year. What's interesting is when we look at the people that didn't redshirt along the way. Dake has 4 losses in his career, 137-4, lost early to Zach Bailey and Reese Humphrey. I believe those were both at the Cliff Keen, if I'm not mistaken. He avenged those losses later. Lost to Donnie Vincent of Binghamton in a dual meet, a New Yorker that he's known probably his entire life. And then Kevin LaValle at the EIWA finals in a wild, I believe it was a tiebreaker because it was at Bucknell. I was actually there that year. It was one tournament that was known for Ryan Flores. Then I think he was at Columbia doing the standing Granby. He may have been an American by then, but it was just a standing Granby at heavyweight against Zach Ray. I remember that was that same year at Bucknell. But we look at Dake, freshman year, beats Montel Marion, who finished. I mean, this is where we get into the depth of who Dake beat. That just cements this choice. I mean, of course, 1-1-1-1 cements the choice, but to give him at least a little bit of the conversation, Montel Marion did not start, did not qualify his freshman year. Then went second, fourth, second, 3-time All-American. Then we got Frank Molinaro, 8.521, 4-time All-American. Derek St. John, 4.215, 4-time All-American. Then David Taylor, 2.121, 4-time All-American. 4 finals, 2 Hawkeyes, 2 Nittany Lions with 15 All-American honors, including 4 national championships, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 finals appearances. So he's one of the best to ever do it.
As if we didn't have to define his greatness even more. We already knew, but just you saying those things and the quality, because it's surprising. Like, of these multiple champs that you broke down, like, I remember their accomplishments. I don't necessarily remember who they actually beat like you do, but going through your document and breaking down who they actually wrestled, I mean, I'm actually more impressed with Dake after looking at his resume, because comparing his resume, the 4 titles are the obvious, why he's being put on this, but it separates itself and compounds the argument by the quality of opponents he beat. He's arguably probably run the gamut as far as quality opponents that he beat throughout the entirety of his career. You were just talking about the finals, who he beat.
Yeah, those are pretty stout weight classes. And like, we can go back and analyze how good they are. But again, that's not the discussion point. We're talking about the people that won those weight classes. So I think that's a safe bet to put as the 6th. So now I'm going to write on my little document, because in the world of social distancing and working remotely, we use Google Docs. But then again, so is everybody who's ever done a podcast currently doing things at the same time. So Kyle Dake, we add this. This is Kyle Dake, Cornell. Okay, then we got 137 and 4. So that is an impressive list of those 6 before we've even gone through and started to replace it. Because right now it looks like Bill Cole and Mark Chiarella. They're the deer in the headlights right now.
Might be on shaky ground.
Yeah, so we got 2 4-timers. Then we got Lee Kemp, who's 2-1-1-1. McElravy, who's 1-1-2-1. And undefeated Bill Cole, who was freshman ineligible. Well, actually, there was no tournament yet because it was World War II, as he came back and goes 1-1-1. Mark Chiarella, 3-1-1-1. And then Dake. So 2 4-timers, 1, 2, 3, 4 4-timers. The 4 3-timers. Everybody's won at least 3 titles. That's almost the benchmark that we have to argue here.
Yes, I mean, if we're going to qualify this or somewhat standardize this discussion, you almost have to introduce some loose criteria. And with the multiple, as you were saying, with the multiple time champs, what did you say? 12 in the last 15 years that won?
I think it's probably
titles?
It's 10. I think I actually included 2 74-pounders when I was typing this up. So I think it's the 10, because I moved Askren and Pendleton up to the upper weight discussion.
But even of the 10, the majority of them are all multiple time champs, 4-time All-Americans. Mm-hmm. So I think we have to introduce some loose criteria, I would say, and we did this during the 75th discussion. Titles kind of trump, and in my criteria, and this was based on the fans to begin with, my criteria, if I had to vote on this, would go for titles. And of those titles, then I would get within that and say, okay, who did he beat to win his titles? Would help me hone in on who I would want to pick. And then probably their career record would also factor. And I would have to look outside of the tournament to kind of get some context on their overall career, as opposed to just specifically the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, that's where I think breaking down some of the greatest seasons would be one. But so if we're looking at least 4-time All-Americans, that has to eliminate Jordan Burroughs and Brett Metcalf for 2 different reasons. One, Burroughs didn't redshirt coming out of the chute. He was wrestling at 41 before he got bumped up to 49 and gave some people some fits at nationals as an unseeded true freshman. Eventually, then he goes 3-1. Then he has there's an injury red shirt in there where he tears his ACL. The same year, I think he broke his face against Justin Gaethje's head. I believe that's what it was at Cliff Keen. So he's got 2 titles, 3 placements in a DNP. Brent Metcalf, ineligible as a freshman for the situation we all know about Virginia Tech and Iowa, he's ineligible. 1-2-1, does have a Hodge in there. So, even though they had great individual seasons, and Jordan Burroughs is just aura of his freestyle career has also, he even kind of said it on FRL. He thinks that maybe people think his freestyle career has overshadowed how good his folk style career was. He did have 2 awesome years, but for the purposes of this, we got to have 4. So Mr. Burroughs, Mr. Metcalf, we got to say bye-bye to you on this discussion. And again, more wrestling heresy, Matt.
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. We've talked about that. There's a lot of factors that go into playing a part of being an all-time great. And some of those things are in your control. Some of those things are outside your control. Brent Metcalf, unfortunately, with his move from Virginia Tech to Iowa, lost a season. But
actually, he didn't. That was his doing. He could have stayed at Virginia Tech and wrestled.
Yes, true. He did have a choice. So he forfeited. And he made the right. He'll never regret that choice.
He didn't go there because of Blacksburg. We know
he knew what he was giving up. And I don't think this would ever factor into his decision. Like, well, this is not I'm going to be denied being recognized as one of the all-time greats. No, you still are, just for the sake of this argument, unfortunately, with the circumstance. Same with JB. I mean, JB, in my mind, I thought he was a phenomenal college wrestler. Obviously, but he's a guy that kept ascending beyond college. I mean, his trajectory just kept going. He started tapping into what we knew he could be. I think we started seeing that in his sophomore season. And then what he did, for the last basically 14 years from that point, from his sophomore year to now. Yeah. I mean, just an unbelievable trajectory.
I found Burroughs' iPod and gave it back to him one year at National Duels. Actually, Tammy Tedesco and I both get the assist on that. So that we're going to take credit for. That's what started everything. No,
nice.
But again, Burroughs and Metcalf, as great as they are, and it's the rabid fan base that Iowa has, that will put Metcalf up there. But again, it goes to our point about we look at McElravy, we look at Ed Bannock. Both of them had the L their junior year. Now, say we give Metcalf that championship, is we have to actually go back and look to see what he could have done that freshman year at Iowa, if he would have, that redshirt freshman year, if he was eligible, because he did take a loss or 2 during his redshirt year at Virginia Tech. So you can't really just pencil in, he'd have been a champ. But then we see that, well, look what happens his junior year. Gets some guy that doesn't care, throws his sack over his shoulder and says, I'm going to throw lefty headlocks. So, we can argue about the what ifs, but I do want to come back to Metcalf's career. And maybe we analyze some of these what ifs. Maybe that's another topic. We look at those seasons, be like, could this have happened? But back to our discussion. So the names we've got now that are 3-timers that we can look to possibly, we're going to bump out a 3-timer somewhere, because that's all the list has got now. But again, before we even get there, I do want to just glance over a couple names that, well, one, we know about Johny Hendricks. Career went 4-1-1-2. Guy was a warrior. Guy was a villain in terms of embracing that heel role that he's actually kind of taken the opposite role with it in MMA. But in the world of college wrestling, he was the guy everybody loved to hate. He was the beneficiary of a couple bad calls. One of which they actually used in the rules video. I don't know if you remember that, Matt, but
yep.
When they're looking at the rules video, Muzaffar is in on the leg drive. I can't remember the exact situation. I just know that Muzaffar got hit for stalling and then they go back and look at the video and the tape says, this is clearly fleeing the mat. So it was kind of one of those things where, well, that was the semis. And then the way, poor Gary Kessel's name became a verb for almost a decade there. With the calls in the Ryan Bertine match, or excuse me, that was the Torella match. Bertine's gonna be another guy, but the Torella situation with Ryan, and it's just Hendricks was a villain. He embraced it, and a 2-time champ, lost to Perry the next year in the finals after his senior year. It was one of those things where you type of impact you have when people love to see you lose. And Johny Hendricks senior year, they loved to see him lose, and that place went nuts when Mark Perry beat him.
And it was that classic case where you knew that Mark was fine. You knew that Mark was going to break through at some point against Hendricks. They had so much familiarity together, growing up in Oklahoma together, seeing each other, familiarity with each other, and then battling each other, a number of times throughout their career. You knew it was going to happen. You just never expected it to be in his final match. But again, that's why, we can't just assume, like we were talking about with Metcalf and Caldwell. I think a lot of people assumed the outcome of the match, but that's why you wrestle it. And so, yeah, he was inches away, but he also was the beneficiary of a couple really good calls that turned out to that led him to win a national championship.
No, you say they're good calls, and then when you're not taking the opposite position, they're bad calls. But I never want to be a referee. I did it for a very short time to try to understand what it was like. Screw that, never going to do it. Now I kind of let the cat out of the bag when I misspoke. I meant Ryan Chirella, and I said Ryan Bertine. Ryan Bertine is a guy that I felt doesn't get talked about enough. The guy went 6'1", 3'1", won 2 national titles, is from St. Edward, wrestled, the maize and blue. I mean, he's a guy that won some really tough weight classes because in that era, I mean, everybody was beating each other at 57. And I want to go tell you a story real quick. I want to go back to the Beast of the East, and I believe it was, I'm trying to think, 1999, 2000. And that was the first year I went. And I went up there, and this is the first time I see St. Ed's. And I actually have to pick up St. Ed's from the airport. So I'm sitting at the Bob Carpenter Center in Newark, Delaware, not Newark. And me and a guy named Rob Rudloff, who's a Virginia Tech guy, they're like, hey, Jason, can you go get St. Ed's from the airport? And I'm like, sure, I can go get St. Ed's from the airport. Where is it? I'm figuring it's right around the corner. Baltimore. Okay. I'd never been to Baltimore. I didn't know anywhere I was going. Well, St. Ed's plane was delayed, and they just had all sorts of travel problems. They end up getting in the car, and Jim Heffernan ends up sitting next to me in the van, and I'm leading the way. I don't know what I'm doing. They're just sore, cranky guys like Mark Moser in the van. And here I am, I'm a 19-year-old, this is a lesson in how not to interact with high quality athletes and stuff. I've got a big old lipper in, hey, I want you. And just thinking that everybody dipped in wrestling. And remember, I'm only in wrestling for about 3 or 4 years at this point. So and Heffernan looks at me and goes, you realize we are a private Catholic high school, right? And then I just start blaring music, and he just starts screwing with me the entire time. And all the kids are cracking. I am oblivious to the fact that Coach Heffernan's just totally pissed off messing with me. Well, then I make a wrong turn coming out of the airport before we even get there. And so I end up turfing a Catholic church with the van tires. So, and then I get lost. Then as I get lost again, we finally get there. And the whole while, Heffernan is just ready to strangle me. And then Greg Urbis is in the van behind me because they're following. Of course, I'm the one who's got the lead. There's no GPS at the time. We barely had a map. And we came around to Delaware. I drop him off. I was like, can we have the van? I was like, okay, yeah, we give him the van. Well, Ryan Bertine was one of the guys in that van. That year, now we get to the actual story of Ryan Bertine. So I knew that Mikey Pirazzolla from Neshaminy, Pennsylvania was an absolute beast. This guy was, sadly, injuries derailed his career. He was going to go to Lehigh. The guy was the truth. Labe Black from Absegami, Pennsylvania, from Jersey, Absegami, sorry. Sure. Jersey and PA, 2 of their best guys. These guys are on a collision course to meet in the finals. Man, Pirazzolla and Labe Black is going to be great. Ryan Bertine says, First time I ever saw him wrestle, just goes through this bracket, beats them both back to back. I'm like, this guy is the freaking truth. And first time I saw St. Ed's, I ducked them from quite many years after that because Heffernan still, I think, will never let me live that down. I mean, we're talking 21 years ago, but I will just vividly remember when Ryan Bertine jumped on my radar, and it was winning that Beast of the East. And it was nuts. And then seeing him, he's a guy that doesn't get a whole lot of chatter, being a 2-time champ in an era of great middleweights. So here's my hat to you. I tip my hat to you. You're from Ohio. You knew he was good, but that's the first time I got to see him as a Virginia guy. And I mean, you beat Labe Black and Mikey Pirazzolla back to back. You are all world to me forever.
No, I mean, Ryan, I love Ryan. He's such a great guy. And a little known fact, he's he's married, and he's got less accomplishments than his wife. I think his wife was she's one of the all-time great, I want to say, field hockey players. She was on national teams, national winner. I believe she played at Northwestern, but anyway, that's a sidebar. But Ryan is a phenomenal guy, great technician. I was a big fan of him from when he was in high school. And a little known fact, I don't believe he ever won a Big Ten title, did he?
I'd have to. That's not something I was ready to
pretty sure
for. So I will.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure he never won a national or Big Ten title, but went on to be a 2-time national champ.
Yeah, he was a 6 seed and a 2 seed the years he won it. So a 6 seed, I'm pretty sure you win a Big Ten title, you're a 1 or 2. So I'm pretty sure it definitely wasn't his sophomore year when he won it. Now, that was one of those just. he deserves some credit here because he was so good in a weight class that was so wildly unpredictable, and not because it was bad guy. The guys weren't good enough. It was just they were knocking each other off, and it was just such a crazy. Those 57 in those years were just wild. Now we get to, we'll go back to the argument's sake, because I think we've weeded out enough, although we're going to have Imar, David Taylor, and we still got to probably bring Nate Carr back into the discussion because he is a 3-time champ that wasn't on the list. So all these guys are looking to see if they can get back into the list. Well, Mark Chiarella might have to be the one knocked out first because 13 losses is the most on the list by at least double the amount. So Lee Kemp has 6 and a tie. So that might make his spot pretty much wide open. And right off the bat, we'll start with the 3-timers. We're going to argue Jason Nolf. We're going to argue Zane Rutherford. We're going to argue Alex Dieringer. I mean, this is, you got between them, we've got 117-3, 133-4, 126-3. That is 10 total losses in 12 All-American placements and 9 national championships. Phenomenal stats just to start with. So who do you want to start with? I say Nolf, who's got the best overall stats because he went 2-1-1-1.
Yep. Yeah, let's start with Jason.
So again, we've got his 3 losses. Toured Isaiah Martinez, 1 in the Big Ten and then national finals, and then the injury default to John Van Brill, which counts as a loss. As much as we hate to say it, it does count as a loss. That's it. National finals championships against Joey LaValle of Missouri, who was not the most credentialed finalist, went round of 12 DNP, second round of 12. Then beats Hayden Hidley. The year he did it on one leg. And so far, Hidley's a 3-time All-American, obviously getting the credit this year. And then finishing his career beating Tyler Berger of Nebraska, who was round of 12, 5-3-2. So pretty good group of guys he beats, but he will, to me, always be forever tied to Isaiah Martinez, just like Vincenzo Joseph will be.
No, without a doubt. I mean, Jason, and I've got to know him a little bit over the past year. He's just a phenomenal guy, but the impact he made, the way he wrestled, like, it's hard. Like, when I see where this is more difficult now because we have firsthand knowledge of these guys. The majority of the guys that we talked about on the 75th team, we knew those guys by reputation, by stories, but I don't remember really watching many of those guys. But I think the tough thing about this is we have that firsthand knowledge, and these athletes resonate with us and connect with us in different ways. And Jason was so innovative in the way that he wrestled. And so, I mean, so freewheeling and willing to try anything at any time. And then just his phenomenal career. I mean, I want to say he's in there. For me, he's in there without even discussing the other guys because I know who we're going to discuss. And, I think arguably he's got to be that guy.
Yeah, I mean, and from just a bare bones factual perspective, 2-1-1-1. That's not any, and nobody else other than Lee Kemp has that in this grouping here. Now, actually, before we get too off track, I did mention Vincenzo Joseph, who, unfortunately, the lost season really kind of it's weird how that will impact his standing in this type of discussion because he went 1-1-2, and then what's going to happen this year? So, unfortunately, it's all speculation with Chenzo now because I think he clearly has an argument to be in this grouping. And the problem is we didn't have that senior season unfold for him to have another one of those holy crap, Chenzo did it again in the finals kind of things, or did see him have a potential to try to, it wasn't going to be the same guy in the finals should he have made it that far. But again, this is one of the byproducts of this lost season is the speculation and conjecture about Vincenzo Joseph and where he belongs on this list. He could be one of 3 Penn State 3-timers we were arguing to get in here. So that's one thing I don't want to forget about before we get too far here.
Yeah, unfortunately with Vincenzo, like, he was lost in the discussion amongst his Penn State teammates, let alone the all-time greats that we're talking about now.
That's becoming a theme too. We got a lot of Penn State
right,
2 and 3-timers that are like,
for me, when I was thinking about Vincenzo, I'm like, would the narrative have changed if he won his 3rd? Because I had told a lot of people, it's like, he's the least talked about multiple-time national champ that I've ever heard about, just because of the greatness that was all around him. And I was like, but people fail to recognize he's the one guy that actually won as a freshman. None of these other Penn State greats won as freshmen. And he was just overlooked and overlooked. And like, even when he was beating another all-time great, when he beat Isaiah in back-to-back years, he was still being overlooked. So I
I know, it's
regret, like,
crazy.
I was interested to see if the narrative would have changed had he won the third, but we'll never know now. And which is unfortunate, because he is a guy, like, when we look back, I think we're going to appreciate him. I think people started really appreciating Vincenzo this year. Because I think obviously Penn State, there's somewhat, people love them, but there's an equal portion of people that don't like them. But Isaiah was one of those guys. He was a fan favorite. He wasn't from a big
I think
name
you
program.
appreciated, Vincenzo more so because of his battles. He's the one who felled Aymar. He's the one that when him and Marinelli mix it up, they just washer, dryer, kitchen sink. Let's do it. Let's throw it. I mean, he provides that. Oh crap, what's going to happen now? And that's something that I get a smile on my face just thinking about sitting in that lodge in northern Minnesota watching Marinelli wrestle Joseph this year, just watching it on TV and just watching it unfold. Not caring who wins or loses, but knowing that Vincenzo Joseph is going to give you an entertaining bout, no matter what. It's flashy, it's slick, but he's also just very fun to watch. I mean, it's one of those things, like, the inside trip is coming, but he's got a lot more than that. And again, I think as from somebody who, again, I don't care who wins, a perspective of, I just want to say, one, thank you, Vincenzo Joseph, for your 4 years, because you provided us a lot of entertainment from the wrestling community. So before we even get to this discussion, that again, your lost season, thank you.
Because and this is the other difficult thing. The way he wrestled was so appealing, but it was also overshadowed because all the other greats on Penn State's team were equally as exciting in different ways. Jason Dolph was equally exciting in different ways. Zane Rutherford, same. David Taylor, Bo Nickel, all these guys were so entertaining in different ways that we were spoiled by the greatness that we've become accustomed to, right?
Yeah, it's not like I've never worked for Penn State, so I can't be accused of fanboying out here. So, but
which I am, but rightfully so. When we're talking about these guys, I'm like, hey, I will be gladly called a Penn State homer.
Now comes the fun part. Now I think this is probably going to be the toughest discussion, is Zane Rutherford versus Alex Dieringer. 133-4, and Ringer goes 3-1-1-1. Whereas Mr. Rutherford 126-3 goes 5-1-1-1. Had two of those losses coming on the same championship. One of those was to Logan Stieber, who he had actually beaten earlier in the year, then lost to him in the Big Tens, and then loses to Mitchell Port in the consolation semifinals and ultimately finishes sixth. Now, with Dieringer, he loses on the front side of he was the 6th seed and then lost to Brian Realbuto. No, excuse me. He lost to Derek St. John. Of those 4 losses, 3 are to Derek St. John, 2 are that year, or his freshman year. Loses to St. John the next year in the dual meet, doesn't wrestle again. So here is how it breaks down. Third, and then beats Dylan Ness, who goes 2-4-2-6. Beats Taylor Walsh, who's a three-time DNP and then finishes second as a senior, and then beats Isaac Jordan, Wisconsin, who's 7-7-2-4. So 2 of his finals victories are against 4-time All-Americans. Rutherford, his finals victories are to Brandon Sorensen of Iowa, 4-2-3-5, Levon Mays of Missouri, who was a DNP 7-3-2, and then Ronnie Perry, who was the Cinderella that year, who is a 3-time qualifier and 1-time All-American. So even similar there, one final is against a 1-time All-American at the only time they placed. Then you have a 4-time All-American, and then Dieringer does have one extra 4-time All-American, one more lost to the same guy multiple times, just like Rutherford did. I don't think he actually got the chance to beat Derek St. John that season, because when he beat Brian Realbuto in the semis, Realbuto had beaten St. John, who was the number 2 seed. So we're going to be splitting some serious hairs here. And I unfortunately think I know what the difference may be.
And I think you and I had the same thought at the exact same time. I would probably, the tiebreaker for me is Zane won the Hodge. I don't know what you were thinking, but if you want to talk about dominance to qualify their excellence, he did win the Hodge. I don't believe Derringer did. Correct me if I'm wrong, JB.
I think Rigger won the Hodge. Let me just double check on that real quick.
If he did that, then it's even more. It's
well, yeah, because I think that was the discussion. Let me pull it up real quick because I wasn't actually even factoring Hodge criteria because honestly, I don't know if the Hodge is this. I don't think this is wrestling blasphemy at all. I don't know if the Hodge is the tiebreaker because we've got a guy that's won the Hodge with a loss. And I'm a Hodge voter, so it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you can throw that out there. Hold on, let me pull up my Hodge numbers real quick.
What I'm trying to figure
Yeah,
out.
Derringer won the Hodge in 16.
Dang it.
Rutherford won it. I'm
missing
17
essentially, JB, they essentially have the exact same career down to the types of opponents they beat in the finals and the guys they lost to in their career. Like, if now we're getting really micro into the criteria, and I'm like, well, Derringer got third his freshman year.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the quality opponents that year, though. They were a little bit different. I think that Rutherford placed fifth at a better weight compared. Sure. Hold on, I'm looking for the Dan Hodge. Where's my Hodge trophy stuff? It's in my guide. I'm looking through this. I just want to make sure I don't misspeak because I want to make sure that the facts are presented equally.
What about this, JB? Is there
Rutherford won it twice, so that's 2 Hodges to 1.
But you could also make an argument that Derringer was the true middleweight. Zane was at 41 his freshman year, correct? And then he moved up. So
if we want to create some criteria about the weight classes, I can absolutely subscribe to that because again, we're making this up as we go. So it's just
I'm trying to find a point of demarcation here.
I'm going to find one point of demarcation here. And it's going to be something that happens the freshman year. So what kept John Smith off the team, off our list his freshman year? It was a loss at nationals to a guy with 0 credentials.
Okay. No, I mean that
Alex Derringer, his whatever you want to call it, his Google loss, even though the guy he lost to was pretty good coming out of high school. James Volrath, never a qualifier for Penn State because he was obviously behind some really, really great wrestlers. He unfortunately passed away in 2016. So it's one of those things where the story of James Volrath beating Alex Derringer really won't get told anymore. Interestingly enough, Volrath's dad, Bill, was a 3-time national qualifier for Penn State in 76, 77, and 78. So there's that family legacy there, but there is no loss amongst these 3 that are to a non-national qualifier. Granted, Volrath could have gone to any other school in the country and probably been a 4-year starter, 4-year qualifier, maybe a 2 or 3-time All-American. So talent-wise, he was there. But again, credentials, that is the one loss between Rutherford and Derringer that we disqualified John Smith for the same type of thing. So that maybe should be discussed.
Yeah, which is crazy when you think here's another Penn State guy that makes his way in the conversation that wasn't even a starter. And Jimmy was a great guy. Jimmy's actually a guy I recruited to Penn State. He was a Penn Stater. It's not like I had to recruit him. Like, he was Penn State for life, his entire life, with his mom and dad coming through and his dad wrestling at Penn State. So Jimmy was always a Penn State guy. He lived and breathed the blue and white. And unfortunately he passed away a couple years ago. But look at this backup that he won the Southern Scuffle that year when he beat Derringer.
Yeah,
correct. Which is crazy that a backup beats an all-time great and wins the Southern Scuffle title.
We're not even just talking all-time great. We're trying to talk about the greatest 6 wrestlers of a weight class in the last 90 years of NCAA wrestling. Now, to spin this the other way, to give Derringer a shot, to your point, man, I have never said that until I started co-hosting this show, Matt. I've never said, to your point, Derringer has the 3, Rutherford has the 5. So we can say, okay, he's got the 1 loss as a freshman that we throw out. Now, Rutherford also was a true freshman, finishing 5th, and had beaten the national champion that year. So I just think that there's no clear-cut way to determine who should be the 6th spot unless... Well, let's see. We've got. Somebody's going to take the 6th spot. We can't kick any. We're not going to kick Pat Smith out. We're not going to kick Lee Kemp out. We're not going to kick McElravy out. We can't. We just put Dake and Nolf in there. We're moving Bill Cole and Mark Chiarella out. Problem is we're moving Bill Cole out because at 36-0, it's just to the point where there's so much firepower. Maybe this is the recency bias, and we're kicking at an undefeated 3-time national champ. Or does Bill Cole stay on the list, and everything we're arguing about with Rutherford and Derringer, a moot point because we've got an undefeated 3-time national champ coming back after World War II. Mic drop. I don't know. I don't know. I
mean, we knew this was going to be difficult. And this is just fictitious, and we can't even make our minds up. That's
our buddies down in Texas also have their brackets, and they've been arguing the same type of thing with different type of scenarios this year too, and it makes everybody crazy.
I mean, I go back and forth. I keep going back and forth because at certain points in this discussion, I'm like, no brainer, I'm going with Derringer. But now I'm looking at Zane as a true freshman when he beat Logan. Logan was a two-timer, already a two-timer at the time. He didn't go on to become, he already was, which is impressive because at that point, Logan, that was his last loss, wasn't it?
Pretty sure.
I believe it was, which is crazy to think about.
Hate when you put me on the spot like that, Mr.
His
Dernlan.
last loss to a true freshman. That shows you the greatness of what Zane Rutherford was going to become.
I mean, it's almost a coin toss. I mean, it really is, because I don't think there's a bad decision you can make in putting, but maybe we're looking at, okay, how many Oklahoma State's already got a guy on the team, and now Penn State's already got a guy on our team. So you can't you break the tie one way or the other. I mean, it's just like you're trying to.
Well, I got it, JB.
What do you got? What do you got? Heads, what type of coin you got?
I got a quarter. Heads, Derringer. Tails, Rutherford. We might as well solve it the old-fashioned way, or we could rock, paper, scissors. Whatever you want.
Well, I don't want to lose Big Ten titles like Royce Alger did. So.
All right. So coin toss.
Is it a weighted coin? We should go to a ball draw. No, that's great. Okay. That's probably okay.
Call it.
Okay, tails.
We're going with Derringer. It's
right.
Head.
Well,
so for all you Penn State people, all you Penn State people that think I'm a homer, we went with Derringer here.
All right.
So
that's if anything, this is this we can revisit this argument like every week. I mean, because I'm
going to be thinking about this tonight because I'm not.
Interesting side note. 1 year, the Virginia duels were decided by the final criteria was a coin toss, and I can't remember. It was Chesbro? I'm pretty sure Chesbro was coaching at Oklahoma State and Lorenzo was at Penn State. Virginia duels finals, every criteria was even, and the last criteria was coin toss, and they said they wouldn't do it, so they declared co-champions at the Virginia duels, Penn State and Oklahoma State. It's history. It was meant to be this way.
Wow.
Well, actually, no, they broke the tie here. So again, looking at that, now there's other names that probably should be discussed. I mean, I think this is the shortest time you can spend arguing Rutherford and Derringer, 2 Hodges versus 1, but you've got the bad loss against Derringer. Derringer had better overall play with the 3-1-1-1. He had beat more 4-time All-Americans in the finals, but now we get to the discussion amongst 2 4-time finalists that in earlier parts of our discussion, if these guys were lightweights, we would be arguing pretty seriously, and that's David Taylor and Isaiah Martinez, and we can't not mention them because they are also 2 of the iconic figures of this generation. We're looking from 2005 till this year, this 15-year span, or 15 years span, going back to St. Louis to where we were going to have this championships in Minneapolis. You got 2 guys that, again, just like Vincenzo Joseph, were electrifying in their own ways. Martinez, not always the prettiest when he got into those tight matches, found ways to win. David Taylor has been flashy since he was a kid, has always been able. I mean, I just put his finals video from the Beast of the East from 2005 up on one of my Rockfin platforms, and it was just like, whoa, little guy. I interviewed him. I got a 30-second interview with him. His ears are still the same size as they were back then. So just to see him just be this monster of an individual now. But Taylor ended up 134-3. Chenzo 111. Excuse me. I will always confuse Chenzo and Martinez because they're always tied to me, just like Nolf and Martinez are too. So Isaiah Martinez 111-3. Losses are to Nolf and Joseph. Finals win, and we're talking Aymar here. Finals win over Real Budo, who went 2-6 DNP because he got hurt at the tournament, and 5. and then NWHOF 2-1-1-1, then losing to Joseph 1-1-2 had placement 1-1-2 placement, while Taylor goes beats loses to Bubba Jenkins, who was a DNP 2 DNP 1, which is one of the strangest careers you can find. Then beats Brandon Hatchett, who was DNQ DNP 7-2. Loses to Dake, who was 1-1-1-1. Beats Tyler Caldwell, who was 5-2 3-2. So when we look at the comparisons, I think you got to there's 2 2-timers and then then 2 4-timers on DT side, and then you've got 4-timer, 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 3-timer. So I think statistically, I went through this and looked too. Just off the top of my head, Taylor beat like 17 or 18 All-Americans throughout the course of his career, but his finals opponents, except save Dake, were okay. Who was the best guy you beat? So that's kind of where that comes in. Where Imar, it's pretty clear the best guy he beat was well, he's beaten NWHOF and he's beaten Vincenzo Joseph. So those are 2 easy questions.
And I know where I think I'm going on this, but I think I want to point out, like, it was surprising for me when I looked at your breakdown of who David didn't beat at his tournaments. There's not like a marquee guy like, wow, that was a huge signature win at the tournament, because he was so dominant his entire career.
He's the signature guy at those weight classes.
Yes. And my thing is, like, I think a lot of guys vacated the weight class because they didn't even want to compete against him. So those high quality guys outside of his junior year, when Dake jumped in there, I think a lot of guys like ran. I don't want to say he
had a lot of respect given to him, for sure.
Right. So on one hand, we can say, well, David didn't beat anybody at the national tournament, but I can say he didn't beat the quality of opponents at the NCAA tournament because they ran from him. So you only wrestle the guys that are in front of you, and he completely dominated almost everyone. But unfortunately, having 2 titles, and again, we've made a lot of.
He's got 2 Hodges.
He's got 2, but we said, as titles go, he's with the multitude of 3- and 4-time champs at this weight. Like, unfortunately, for me, he doesn't make the list. And one of my personal all-time favorites, Isaiah, doesn't make the list either, which it's crazy. 3 losses by both of these guys.
6. Yeah. I mean, it's just, and to think that's how excellent these middleweights have been. And, there's the arguments about, who was the better technician, who had the most wins. And then, I sometimes still wonder, like, what was David's best win? Was it Caldwell? Was it Steve Fittery? Was it, and then of course the situation with Bubba potentially having that big brother on him for that year they were together in the room. But then credentials, I mean, we were looking at, Bubba's up at 57, does not place, then goes second, then, is the 2 seed and 2 in Qs at nationals the next year, and then transfers and then wins a national title with a situation that was probably not as good of a training environment that he had in Tempe that he would have had in State College. So with all the drama that circled around that, but then comparing the 2, we both have 2 4-time finalists. We have 2 2-time champs, but David won his last championship, whereas Martinez ended his career on a loss. So there's some optics there that also will probably lean the historical favor towards David Taylor when these 2 ever get compared, because it's not a comparison you often get, Imar versus David Taylor.
No, not much at all. And I think because I don't know why that's never been brought up. Maybe because, do we really want to throw in another Penn State guy to compare against Isaiah? We've already got 2 of the all-time greats from their program that we compare against Isaiah, and he's already going to be talked about with Joseph and NWHOF moving forward forever. Do we really want to, tack David Taylor onto that?
I think if we go, like, if we start ranking top 10s, if we take more than just 6, like we're trying to do here to keep it in line with the 75th team, but this is a situation where a guy like Daryl Burley, to me, enters the equation to be compared to these 2 who went 1-2-2-1, had losses to the same guy. Randy Lewis ran roughshod over most everybody in that era in terms. So, and then, Nate Carr, who's a 3-time champ. So those guys, the 3-time champ, but only the 3-time All-American and doesn't place. And, 17 losses might knock Nate Carr from that era. So I think now we've got clear breakdowns of I don't want to call it tiers, because I think the tier between these is just, we're literally looking through and trying to find any blemish to create a separation criteria. And to me, I love the fact that, again, it keeps this stuff fresh in my mind. It's provided some historical context, especially when comparing to the greats. But again, I feel like dissing Bill Cole too. We almost need to find something or somebody, maybe we take the torch, I don't know, whoever, and maybe we all come together in terms of this wonderful world of wrestling that we live in and say, we need to define eras, because all-time greats, there's different sets of rules. There's different sets of criteria for eligibility. I think the 4-year era is different than the 3-year era. And I think that has to be a dividing line, because I think it does a disservice to we maybe kind of did that to Bill Cole a little bit, because again, we don't know anything about him. It was right after World War II. I mean, you're an undefeated 3-time champ. That's the best you could have done in that era. So there's that distinction where when we get to 100 years, I think when we get to that, because they're going to be 100 years. So we've got 10 more years for that to happen. I'll be 50, which is scary to think about. We got to do generational things. We can't continue. What we're doing here with the 90th team is probably not going to work beyond our exercise here, in my opinion.
No, at a certain point, I mean, we could actually break this down. We could destroy this argument pretty easily if we wanted to. We're just having its sake of discussion, because you see it in all these sports from across eras. Like, I love just promoting greatness. They're great in an era. Hey, they're great. Recognize it. But for the sake of this, we can't do it. But it would be interesting at a certain point to distinguish those things a little bit better.
Yeah, and we're looking at how people, you look at other sports, like baseball, for example, is the most statistically, driven sports. The Alaska Sports Bureau spends so much of their time on baseball. Well, I think the word is like great pitchers like Bob Gibson would still thrive today. But how would a Cy Young, how would Ty Cobb's style of baseball be played today? How would Honus Wagner, who's known for being the most rare, expensive baseball card on the market, how would those guys compete in today's era? And that's the same thing we do with ours. And, because the style of wrestling has changed. It's a completely different style. It's less on control and pinning. And we got the technical fall was not a thing then. And, there's very few wrestlers that people say that, they could probably compete today because the rules are what they are. I mean, I remember Steve Martin telling me that when he would talk about Gray Simons, he goes, he was so fast. He says he's probably, even Steve said he thinks he's one of the only guys from that era that would be able to compete with the guys today because he was that fast. So it's just some interesting discussion points. And again, not being of that era, it's just kind of, I sit back and if you're an Iowa State Teachers College alum, AKA Northern Iowa, and Rob Cole on line one, he's going to be mad that we screwed Dad over again. Sorry.
Yeah. So what else do we have?
I think I think I've gone through it and checked off most of those lists. Again, we touched on Burroughs and Metcalf because they've just had the 2 and then their situations, but those are the names. I wanted to make sure we got Ryan Bertine and Johny Hendricks in before we got too far into the conversation, but I think that pretty much can put a bow on it. We still may have you decided it by a coin flip, but I'm just going to put Slash and TBD for ZR on the team. We'll have to come back and maybe have, I don't know if we can analyze it. We have to probably go match by match. You're going to look at bonus points. We're going to look at, one guy was a little flashier and then the other ones can rip your arm off. And then the other one had better hair. I mean, it's just like do we have to go to Fargo titles? Do we have to, I don't know. It's just, it's all college stuff. It's all fun. Again, you solved it with a coin toss. I'm gonna say maybe we should go 2 out of 3 on the coin tosses next time to decide the 6th spot on our team for the 90th.
No, that sounds good.
All right, Matt, I understand you've got some birthday plans, so I'll let you get to it. So for Matt Dernlan and his birthday party coming up, I'm Jason Bryant. Thanks for listening and watching episode 155 of the RUDIS Wrestling Podcast.